Howdy, everyone. Welcome
Good
back.
morning.
Morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it's for you.
Cheers.
Uh, Cheers. Coffee time for me. But, I'm not a good example because it's always coffee time for me. All right. Last time we looked at a few hands from the WSOP Europe final table. What we're going to do today is finish the hand selection that we made, but before we continue, I'd like to take a step back and go through a few spots from the sims that we already looked at. The main reason for that is that it's a reminder for myself as well that when we're looking at a sim, we don't have to, and not only have to, we shouldn't just focus on, ooh, is this hand played correctly? But there's so much information we can gain from a single simulation that it's a good practice to even if you're studying a specific spot, just look at the outer ranges for a couple seconds. Maybe you learn something. So we're going to start with that. Where just a reminder, this is the payout structure. Bubble factors for this hand. We're looking at four-handed. And I wanted to start with, like, for example, bet an opening here and see how ranges compare. I already have that prepared down here.
Mm.
So on the left-hand side, you have the regular ante, right-hand side, you have the BB ante. The reason I'm showing you this is not so much the difference in frequency. We already established that the BB ante is going to try to VIP it more. But a very interesting thing from a fundamental standpoint is that you also start seeing a shoving range develop. It's tiny, right? It's like just 1%, less than 1%. But the principle stands, and it's something to be aware of. Remember last time we looked at a covering small blind, open shoving 3 times more in BB ante compared to normal ante. But the same heuristic applies for opening ranges as the cover stack, where with the big blind ante making the pot bigger, you would like to at least be open to the possibility that you might want to play some open shoves, depending on risk premiums, stack sizes, how your opponents play, etc. It's just a small idea, uh, something to something to keep in mind. Briefly, cut off
Yeah,
opening ranges. Oh,
and I just wanted to add, like, this is 22 bigs RFI button open. And if we, let's say, go to 20, you can already see the shape of hands that would want to shove and would want to shove more frequently when we get a bit more shallow.
yeah, exactly. Like I'm pretty sure one of the sims that we have must have a 20 big blind button. Let's see. Do we have? We have 15. Let me see, do we have a 20? No, we have 15. Let's look at the 15 just for re-exercise. This is big blind ante, and let's find our regular ante just to get a quick glance. All right, different sim. Uh, we have 41, 15, 38, 34. So it's a clear short stack. With 15 bigs, you're not really short stack, but you still need to double up to get back in the mix. But you're not like a 5 big blind. But left hand, big blind ante, right hand, regular ante. Here, the difference is more pronounced for a couple reasons. First of all, we're shorter. Therefore, winning the chips in the middle is worth more to us than it was to the 22 big blind stack. There are these simple things that used to be heuristics way before solvers, and funnily enough, solvers actually corroborate that sort of thinking where it does actually matter quite a bit whether you're 15 bigs or 20 bigs in the sense that winning the 2.5 bigs in the middle does matter a lot more to you, even in the mathematical model, not just in the human logical sense. And as Pavel mentioned, you can clearly see the shape of the shoving range, the sort of hands that are interested, and the way it expands. The expansion is very natural, and this is going to be true for any spot where in a big blind ante format you'd like to shove more. You're going to expand here, you're going to expand some here, you're going to expand some here, pretty straightforward how it works.
Sorry.
You got anything to add?
Uh, no, just the logic applies, yeah. Even in the tiny 1% range, you can imagine how we're gonna widen and how the range will expand.
Yeah, these open shoving ones are fairly straightforward to nail down. We can look at the small blind. We're in the sim. Let's go. Why not? This is our regular ante. This is our BB ante. So the big versus big. And okay, left-hand side regular, right-hand side BB ante. Again, a little bit more. This is playing, big stack versus big stack or mid versus mid, whatever you want to call it. Your second versus third, fairly deep. There's not going to be shoving here. And you are going to be, again, opening more in the big blind ante. You cover, the pot is worth more, you just open more. Again, speaking about shapes, because that's probably, depends on how you learn, but for many people, shapes are the thing that makes the most sense. Again, you can see an expansion, very different situation. Now we're not talking about shoving, we're talking about raising more, fighting a little bit more for the pot. We're covering, so the way we expand is we just, if this is your online sim, the way you expand is you just increase frequencies a little bit, trap a bit less in order to have a more protected range, bluff a bit more.
Yeah, and this is big difference. Right? We raise 50% more hands.
Yeah, we raise 50% more. We fight a lot more for the pot. All right. And then let's go back to the original one. Actually here, right? Yeah. So this was our button. This is the cutoff in the same sim, the 42, 22, 37, 25. As you can see, like there are instances where the difference is not gonna be huge. And the way I'll define spots where you see ranges being that close is a situation where you don't get to pressure by open shoving, for example. You don't have your stack and position don't necessarily have a huge incentive to try to push too much. And a formation like this where open shoving is not really a thing because you have 37 big blind stack, so on and so forth. The pot is bigger, the solver is trying to bip a bit more, but you're not trying to do anything crazy. Generally speaking, the adjustments will be more and more important the shallower you are, which is what this comparison here can kind of illustrate how things are going to develop. If you're playing 50 big blind average forehand final table with big blind ante, you can probably rely on your regular ante sims, to be honest. But realistically speaking, most final tables don't play that deep, unless you're playing some WSOP deep stack event. I don't know, monster stack or something like that. Not even sure that even there they get to play as deep. All right, next one. Next time we had the one with the reshoves, which actually had a couple really interesting ones. It's this one, right? Okay, it's the one. All right, let's look at the button here. See if what I already have it. What I said is actually true. Okay, so the sim that we're looking at is 24, 37, 25, 44. This was this hand. If you want some visuals of this hand where they ended up stacking off cut over small blind for 25, and we discussed this fake reshove last time. But now we're going to look at the button. So what happens if cutoff folds, and now we're second in chips opening into first in chips. Again, one position later. Remember, we looked at cutoff, the difference was not that big. Here, the expansion is kind of more in line with the usual 3 to 5% that we discussed. Let's quickly check the small blind response there. Oops. Okay, this is small blind response in regular ante. This is our BB ante. Okay, we already know what to expect, right? But just to keep nailing it down. All right, so regular on the left hand, BB on the right hand. Remember, this side, the BB ante, is facing a slightly wider opening range, as well as the pot being slightly bigger. Same thing happening, as we discussed. There is an expansion. There is an attempt to start flatting. It's hard to do it, but the solver really starts to get interested because of the pot is so important. You want to fight for the sort of expansion that Pablo mentioned. Again, if we're going to expand and you have some sort of an idea of how range should be constructed, and you have these thoughts, I should be mixing these hands, and you're in a big blind under format, you can probably just push a little bit further, and if you think you should mix half the time, mix 75%, or try to find a simplification like that. It's probably better to have such an estimate in your head rather than completely be guessing. But again, kind of depends on how you want to approach it. But probably don't try to, is a general rule of thumb, don't try to remember what you looked at. Try to think logically about what is happening and why we're doing what we're doing. All right. That being said, this out a bit. And let's move to the next hand, actually. The one where this is very, very interesting. Why does it show it from here? Okay. Go back. The next hand is probably the hand of the tournament, maybe. Mm.
The hand of the tournament, you say?
Yeah, I think so. All right. So the hand in question is here. And we're gonna quickly that. So we're three-handed. We have a button chip leader open 50 bigs. We have Huni in the small with sevens. Flatting, which is a pretty standard decision, I'd say. Not too much to discuss there. Konishi wakes up with a hand, three bets. And I believe the size is 8 million, not 18. Yeah, they fixed it. Huni has a decision and he decides to go all in. Now, a couple of things here.
How do you like each of these decisions?
So I think every decision was interesting. That's why I said end of the tournament. When we watched the replay, I was like, I'm not sure we have yet to open that wide, especially since if I remember correctly, the previous orbit of three-handed player following orbit, he folded like a jack six offsuit on the button. So there was a little bit of an inconsistency there, maybe with the strategy. It felt a bit too wide, probably even for a big stack. I understand he's opening into the recreational player, so maybe he wants to widen. Jack four offsuit probably a bit too wide though at this stack depth. Since they both get to just flat and play post flop, and Jack four is a really weak hand. Really.
Yeah, like we don't need to go that wide.
No, we don't need to
I
go that
agree.
wide. We're the chip leader. We get to VPIP so much anyways that it's unnecessary to try and force it. It could be a psychological thing as well. I've been in situations where I'm a chip leader and I catch myself sort of trying to force it. You want to win it. You want to, oh, I can push so much. It's very important on the psychological side of things to be aware when these things happen and try to adjust, to try to sort of calibrate yourself to the knowledge that you have, to the understanding of the game that you have, and be able to overcome the propensity to try to force something to happen. You're going to play a lot of hands three-handed. You don't need to force it. You're going to be playing 50, 60, 70, 80% of hands. It's okay.
Yeah,
but it's
and
also
having the chip lead doesn't mean we have to push every hand. We have to push that much.
Yeah.
That much. And here, like the second guy is very close anyway, so it's not like we have a big chip lead and we have two short middle stacks that can be pushed around because the pressure is on them who busts first, right?
Yeah, and also the guy who's second in chips is an extremely competent opponent. It's not somebody who is gonna be unaware. Kuni is gonna adjust fairly quickly, I imagine, if we keep trying to do stuff like that. And then small blind flat seems perfectly standard. I don't see a whole lot of reason. Maybe the soul will three bet like a low frequency. I don't remember exactly. We'll see. Sometimes you see these like sevens, eights, sixes, fives get in there with a small frequency three bet. But mostly just flatting. Big blind has a pretty clear decision. You can only three bet. There's nothing else you want to do. Way too deep to reshove. our hand is way too strong to not free bet it and just get it in. And then the really contentious decision is the back shove from Huni. When I first watched this, I was like, "Ooh, this feels bad." Uh, it actually turned out to be not so bad. When we ran it in the solver, but
Yeah, a lot here depends on how Konishi is playing. How capable is he to find some bluffs, or how wide is he going with his value hands?
mm. Yeah, the danger with this sort of play that Uni picks is that it can be amazing if the big blind is over bluffing by just a little bit because you can deny so
Mm,
much equity. But then it's a game of really fine margins. Like I would like to be quite sure in my estimates of how much he's three betting before I do something like that. Because even if he's overdoing it, he's still supposedly the recreational of the table. So I think we can also be fairly confident if we think he's overdoing it, we can also flat and play post flop with him. Yes, we're out of position, but if we are running the assumption that we are the better player and we can navigate better, it goes both ways. Yes, we can think he's overdoing and shove, and it can make us a lot of money if we're correct. But also there's this idea of floor and ceiling of a decision, right? Where it's a good idea to keep in your mind when you're making a decision at the poker table, what is the floor of how bad can your decision be if you're wrong, and what is the ceiling of how good can it be if you're right? And usually it's a good idea to pick
mm,
asymmetric spots, right? Like in general, in life and in poker, like you want to be put yourself in positions where you take the decision where if you're correct, you win considerably more than you lose if you're wrong. And this specific spot, I don't feel is like that. I think it's not asymmetric enough for us to go all in with sevens. Since we have other options, we can just flat. The three bet is not that massive. We have plenty of stack to play.
yeah, that's a good framework to have and
Yeah.
to remember.
All right. Let's throw these ranges in there. Okay. We have the flatting range. We have the three betting range. Okay. Okay. Here's my. Oh no, I haven't clicked anything. That's why I don't have it, of course. So fold, and this is the back shoving range. Let's find our normal ante, regular ante sim. Our opening range, Jack 4 offsuit is nowhere near. We have our flats. Oops, flat. We have a squeeze. Okay, we got click. We have squeeze, fold, and we have our back shove. All right, let's go. All right, it's a bit messed up like that. I shouldn't have done it that way. All right. Anyways, so that we don't wait 5 minutes me reordering these things. Let's go sim by sim. Let's start with regular ante. We have opening range, which looks like this. Obviously, Jack for offsuit is
Yeah,
nowhere to be found. Small
way too
blind,
much.
as we thought. We flat these middling pairs, sevens and like fives through eights, as we mentioned. They could be three bet, like low frequency solver is balancing stuff. You don't need to do that unless you have a very good reason for doing that. Then the squeeze, pretty normal. We have some all-ins for 34. Queens, as we mentioned, it's just a very, very clear value three bet. The sizing used is the sizing chosen in game. And then we have the final decision where Huni is facing the squeeze, and sevens in the normal ante sim are, I'd say, this is a fold to me. There's a little bit of a call if you want to be ambitious. But generally speaking, it's always also kind of clear
Yep.
why we're folding here. If you look at the three betting range, again, those are nice heuristics to have. You generally, like higher risk premium scenarios, you're not going to be VIPing pocket pairs that are dominated by every pocket pair in the raising or squeezing range. In this case, the bottom here is eights. We can see that eights, and this is also pretty stable heuristic. Generally, you're facing a raise and you have to decide what to do with it. You can be the big blind facing an open, or in this more complex scenario, the small blind facing a big blind squeeze. You're usually gonna be mixing going all in and folding with the pair which matches the lowest pair that they're raising, and you're gonna be folding below that, or if you're facing an open, you're gonna be calling. Here, the solver is not super interested in calling because of the risk premium scenario. All right. That being
Yeah,
said,
and there's the thing what I was asking about, like how many bluffs can he actually find? Because we have quite a bit of them, right? Like they are all over the place, like king deuce suited, ace nine off, ace eight off, ace deuce off, queen ten off. Um, yeah, that's a bunch of hands that should three bet.
that's a lot of
Uh,
bluffing. For sure,
yeah,
that's a lot of bluffing. Um,
and I'm not sure if the guy is gonna find them, to be honest. What do you think?
I mean, I don't play. I've only watched him play for a couple hours. He did seem to be playing quite cautiously. So my guess is he probably will not be finding all of those esoteric bluffing combos at whatever frequencies he should. It is completely possible, though, that he does match the bluffing frequency if he,
Hmm.
for example, thinks that he wants to bluff every time with ace jack offsuit, ace 10 offsuit, ace 9 offsuit, or something like that. It is hard, but also he's the covered stack, so even in the solver world, his bluffing frequency is not completely out of line. It's not like it's a big stack who can have a huge bluff to value ratio and has
Mm,
to find all those esoteric bluffs. I don't think he'll find this sort of bluff composition, but I don't think it's completely unreasonable uh, for this player to find roughly the same amount of bluffs just from a different part of the range.
all right.
But we're just
Yeah,
guessing,
makes
right?
sense.
We're just guessing. A cool example and something we can do on the following session is get into HRC and play around with that. Keep the bluffing frequency the same, but shift to more particular combos. And that's where the really cool exploits actually come into play. Because obviously, you never have the solver clairvoyance when you're in game, but you can still, especially if you see showdowns, get a sense of how people are constructing. And if you know specific sections that are preferred by a player for their bluffs in a given situation, you can really adjust hardcore versus that. The reason the solver is mixing is to not allow the other player to just have pure decisions. If you remove that mixing, but you keep the frequency, you're going to have a lot of pure decisions here.
Hmm.
All right,
Makes
BB
sense.
ante. We have a wider open, naturally a couple percent. Jack 4 offsuit still nowhere to be found. We have a bit more clear strategy in the small blind, so we're losing some of the free betting here. The solver wants to VPIP more, as we've established already with the big blind ante. It's a good 2% more flatting, and it achieves that by, removing some of these mergy three bets, turning those into calls, so slightly, it's still a very condensed range, but also a slightly more defined, stronger range. Then we have the big blind squeeze, which looks very, very similar. One thing that I notice immediately, which is pretty cool to me, is the calling and how it shifts. So we go like 2% more, flatting, those suited hands are a bit more interested. Reshoving, fairly similar, almost the same. Bluffing combos, very similar. The three bet sizing is the same. And then going back to the most interesting decision in the hand, now we actually see sevens get more interested in shoving. So it was surprising to me, but also really cool to see that how that half a big blind more in the pot actually drives. By driving everybody wider, it also, even getting to these very complex nodes, you start seeing some back shoving. Now, of course, this is just
Hmm.
a mathematically perfect situation, as Pablo mentioned. Do we really want to be doing that? Do we think this player is going to find the bluffs, etc.? I don't know, probably not. But the fact of the matter is, if Kuni was playing versus a solver, he took a kind of a neutral EV play. And initially I thought, oh, this is very bad. It's not very bad. Mm.
Yeah.
There could be some argument that, like, because remember, we just said like a minute ago that one, like, a good heuristic is figuring out what is bottom from the pocket pair section, and then you get to play back with that a little bit. Like in the normal ante sim, sevens are 100% call. In the BB ante sim, seven actually have a little sliver of something, you know. So then the other sevens have a little sliver of something.
Yeah, but looking at this, like even eights are like the very bottom, mixing some folds. So, um, and we gotta remember that we play live, so there are some additional edges that we can have playing. So I would lean towards folding.
I'll lean towards folding as well. But hey, we're also like, it's very hard to look at these things and not be results oriented. You know, this guy could have had ace queen offsuit and folded versus Cooney. Maybe Cooney thought he can scare him off hands that shouldn't be folding. And then we would be like, oh, this is genius by Cooney. How did he find that?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the beauty of poker. We never know. I mean, we know only one outcome of out of
yeah,
many.
we only
Mm,
see one of the possible scenarios. Like, or also I just want to, I'm pretty sure what the answer is, but I want to see it anyways. Let's say this guy squeezes with like the mix of ace jack offsuit. He goes fold. Wait, where are we right now? It's just gonna be folding, right? Yeah. So yeah, he could have had ace jack offsuit. He could have gone all in. He folds 50% equity and becomes chip leader. So you know, poker is a fun game like that.
yeah, maybe with in different universe that that's what happened. But yeah, as I said, we only see one outcome out of many, and that's the beauty or hard reality of poker. It's yeah, we too often judge a hand through that one example that we saw.
Through the lens of the one thing that we have in front of us. All right, we have one last hand before we
As in
wrap.
life.
That's in life. One last hand before we wrap this up. And I'm gonna finish with a short stack because that's where, as we've mentioned multiple times already, that's the spot that matters the most, is the highest impact in game and changes the most. So the spot we're looking at is 9 big blinds, 70, 50. This is, I believe, the very next hand. So Kuni does not win with sevens. Kunishi does win. And I think, yeah, this is the spot that we're looking at. 6-5, I didn't expect to be a shove, but I was very curious how our shoving range is going to look there. And then I think Kunishi folded the small blind as well, which was a little bit too tight for my liking. But
Yeah, but I understand why he would
uh,
fold that one. I
you
mean,
want a big hand, you're excited, you want to gather your chips and
yeah,
sort of.
you are also like I don't know. You are not a professional, so you look at 7-4 and you're like, oh boy, this is pretty bad hand.
Yeah, that's ugly. I'm still so excited, adrenaline
Um,
pumping.
yeah,
All right, let's quickly go through over this one, wrap it up. First things first, button shoving. Remember 20 seconds ago I said I did not expect 6-5 to be a shove. I didn't think it's a decision. Wrong, wrong, pure shove. Uh, Now here the difference is very, very stark.
yeah.
Again, we've been.
One question, like it's with FGS, isn't it?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
FGS
yeah,
3.
yeah,
FGS means that the solver looks into the future by solving a preset number of future hands. It's very important when running simulations with a short stack present, because if you run this with the, let's say, naked or vanilla ICM model, it will just solve this exact hand. In the future game model, the solver understands that the next hand, this 9 big blind stack, will have to post 2 big blinds, one for the big blind, one for the big blind ante, and the hand after that, they'll have to post the small blind. Uh, and some of the biggest differences that you're going to see with big blind ante formats are going to be with FGS and short stacks, because of how detrimental to your EV it is to be forced to put 20% of your stack in the middle without seeing your cards. And this is a perfect illustration, right? You BPIB 10% more, and you shove. This is a good, 50% more actually. Shoving, and you shove as low as 6-5 and 5-4. This is hard. 7-5 suited, 9-6 suited, 8-6 suited. This is really hard to find. I mean, I ran these sims and I was like, wow. I didn't even think there was a decision here. Like even we spoke of shapes earlier, and like if you haven't studied these sort of formations specifically, like you can make very big mistakes. Because this is one shape where you're like, ooh, maybe I have to shove some suited sevens, and then you go from maybe some suited sevens to I shove almost every suited connector, and go as low as 5 high. Going all in with 5 high on the button is not something that you see a lot in poker.
And then again, like we are three-handed, where the biggest money in tournaments are, and the difference is huge.
Yeah,
The
the
difference is
difference
huge.
is massive, massive, massive. You can see that, this thing like 7-8, which is mixing in, is losing a little bit, and here it's making a ton of EV. Like a useful way of comparing, if you don't have, if you're looking at HRC, maybe you have dollars that works for you, but another useful way to compare is look at the EV of aces every time on any sim, and then you can sort of use aces as a benchmark for the EV so that you have a more realistic comparison. So if we think of it that way, let's say on the left-hand side, our aces, if we look at the shoving, for example, are making 1.11, and our 7-8, which is the border, is basically 0. And then if you look at the right-hand side of the ante, aces, if they shove, they're making 1.45. And then something like 7-8 suited is making 6-7% of that. And something like 6-5, you're getting closer to 0 naturally. Or king 8, king 9. I wonder where the 10% of aces line is going to be drawn. So on this sim, on the BB ante, the 10% of aces is going to be around 10-9 suited maybe. Yeah. And here it will be, we're looking at what? It's going to be much higher. Yeah, it's going to be queen 10 suited. Right? That's a pretty chunky difference in terms of where the EVs lie. So again, maybe that's a bit confusing, but I'm trying to sort of get a sense of how the EVs stack against each other. So with a regular ante, yeah, we're shoving a lot, but also nice to understand why that's happening. The EV of aces for an all-in is 1.11. The EV of king jack offsuit is 10% of that. On the BB ante sim, the EV of shoving ace is 1.45. 10% of that, let's take the same hand actually. King jack offsuit, it's actually closer to 20 than to 10%. I think it's a good illustration of understanding how much the EV is shift and how big of a mistake it can be to play this range, not this range.
And this is pure dollar EV.
This is pure dollar EV, yeah, three-handed. We're playing for, a lot of money. A lot of money. All right, and briefly, before we wrap it up, we have this small blind first in, 7-4 offsuit is a VPIP regardless of the big blind ante. Naturally, we're talking about our range, which plays almost any two cards, being the covering stack with a somewhat of a healthy gap between the second and a very short stack present. But again, we're not going to judge Konishi for, playing it safe here. And this is the big blind response versus the all-in. So the flip side of if you're the short stack is being mindful of if you're a bigger stack facing a short stack who is aware and shoving a lot, is that you have to adjust your calling frequencies. By a fair bit. Not like obviously the difference is not going to be 10%. It never works that way. But it is, you are calling a good 4% more or 20% more in terms of in relative terms to your range. And you see called as low as king 7, jack 10, king 9 offsuit. Whereas here, a suited 9 is undecided. A lot of these kings are folding, and so on. All right. You got anything you want to add? Or discuss?
Mm, I think I'm good. Mm,
All
we
right.
covered quite a good examples. Now,
Okay.
now I want to play.
Yeah, that's good. I gotta
Every
be
time we get something new, I mean, at least me, like when I get some new information, I just would like to go there and use it in real game.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's why I missed coaching. Hadn't coached for a long time, and now that we started doing these seminars, slowly, getting excited about it. It's so fun when you sit down and study, and then you're so ramped up to play. You're like, okay, let's go and test all those things. I mean, realistically, I'm not gonna be playing any big blind ante today, since I'm at home and gonna be playing online series. But hey, still excited.
Yeah, but who knows? 1 month from now, you can be playing on WSOP final table and using this type of information to your advantage and making a lot of money when the pay jumps are high. Um,
Hopefully,
the,
hopefully.
yeah, that's what's great about studying the things that are understudied but by the population. The edges are real. You're not learning to defend your strategy. You're learning to exploit here. That's how I view this topic.
It pretty much is, yeah. It's kind of it's funny because on the one hand, this is like purely fundamental mechanical poker, which in a way is not exploitation, but when you compare it to the field, which is what you should always be doing because you're not playing versus computers, this is pure exploit, in the sense that it's still largely unexplored. Sure, there's some elite players who are aware, but almost any field that you're playing, understanding these things is almost like a pure exploit, like a cheat code, a little bit, which is always good. It makes you real money.
Oh yeah. All right, George,
Uh,
that was great. Let's wrap it up here.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So yeah, thanks for joining, and I guess see you soon since we enjoyed.
Yeah, see you in the next one. And good luck.
See you in the next one. Good luck at the tables. See you at the WSOP.